I have just been asked a brilliant question. If every killer in Dead by Daylight was in the same room and they all had to fight to the death, who would come out victorious? And yeah, today we're going to discuss that. So again, another pretty simple premise, but a really good question that I have never been asked before, so it was really cool to be able to go through every killer and think about how they would last in a fight with everybody else. And instead of giving you like kind of a verbal dynamic on how I think it'd go, like, oh, this would happen, then this would happen, then this would happen, this person would die, and then this would happen, because I think, honestly, they could go so many ways with so many hundreds of variables on the table. I don't think that would be the right way to come about it, but the way that I think that would be the best is to basically categorize every single killer into how long I think they would last. So before we begin, I just want to say as well that this is a video that's been kind of based off a comment. Some of the comments that you've been putting, guys, on what I should create has been absolutely phenomenal, whether it be serious guides or kind of stupid rank systems like this. Please let me know if you have any below. I have absolutely loved going through them, and I just want to keep making great content on great questions that you guys ask. And the absolute last thing that I'm going to mention is the only killers that I'm going to give a little bit of context on right now before we get into it is the Legion and the Twins. Now, Legion is what you play as one character, but you can choose up to 4 different characters. In this, I'm going to have it so all 4 versions of the Legion are there at the same time. You've got Julie, Frank, Joey, and Susie all there, ready to fight as one, as well as the Twins. I'm not going to count them as fighting individually per se, because I imagine it'll be a lot of teamwork, if you will, but I am going to count their deaths as 2 different deaths. So I will have 1 death for when I think Victor's going to go, and 1 death for when I think Twins is going to go. But guys, I have rambled on far too long. Let's get straight into it. And these are the characters that I think would instantly die. First on the list is Victor, for obvious reasons. He's absolutely tiny. He will do little to no damage to any of the killers. The only killer he could probably inconvenience is one of the humanoid killers, like Trickster or Legion or maybe Pig or something like that. But honestly, I can just envision this. The trial starts, every killer begins, and then fucking Nemesis stands on him, and that's a KO. That's a game right there. So yeah, Victor without question would be the first to go. Next up on Instantly Dead, it is going to be the Pig. Now, the Pig, besides her little knife blade, she wouldn't really be able to put her traps into good use, so we can kind of just completely get rid of those from the equation. She is a small, thin female amongst a room full of supernatural killers, big hulking monstrosities. She would get absolutely slapped very more or less instantly. As I feel, so would the Legion. I'd probably say Legion has more of an edge than Pig, because obviously there's 4 of them. But even though I'm ranking Twins and Victor as separate people, I feel like every member of the Legion would go down pretty quickly in the same kind of way. They may be able to sprint and get a good head start somewhere, but eventually somebody who is going to be bigger and badder is just going to grab them and kill them. It is going to be absolutely no resistance. They might get an odd stab, but compared to some of the other weapons that the killers are bringing, that isn't going to do much either. So yeah, Instantly Dead is Legion as well. As is the Trickster. Now, Trickster, again, humanoid person. He has a bat with a blade on it, and he has his knives, so I think he would more or less die instantly. A couple of the little paper knives that he throws isn't going to really do much damage to many of these people, and he's just not familiar enough with battle. He's kind of he's a killer, he's a horrible person, but everything he does is kind of done to hostages and to taken subjects, not like in a one-on-one fight, where I think Trickster would get his ass beated. So yeah, Trickster's instantly dead too, as well as the Hag. Now, the Hag admittedly is really strong. She's obviously a witch who can put down traps and hexes and all that kind of stuff, but I still feel like she wouldn't have enough time to do anything before another killer came up and just completely wiped her out. Like, she could be laying down little traps or doing a little bit of witchiness in the corner. Bubba could come by, swing his chainsaw, and it's a rip. It's a GG right there. So even though Hag is potentially powerful, I think she's too small, too nimble, and too weak as a base level to really be able to do anything. Next, it is going to be Freddy. Now, Freddy, again, he's just human. I don't really think he can take into account in this the dream world and the dream state and all that kind of stuff. I think the only part of his powers that you can really take, because I'm going to be majority going on base game rather than lore from obviously from their films or their games that they're respectively from, but I do have to draw a little bit of inspiration from it, of course. But as it is, he's basically just a dude, and he's got his finger knives gloves. Yes, he might be able to make the puddles or the blood pallets. They're not going to do anything. I reckon he would get taken out fairly quickly, which is a shame because Freddy is one of the most nerfed killers in Dead by Daylight. And what I mean by that is nerfed from his true powers potential. Like, if he was imported into DBD as strong as he is in the films, he would be unstoppable. But unfortunately, he's fairly nerfed, so I don't reckon he'd last long at all. And lastly, I don't really think Ghostface would have much of a chance either. Again, he's just a normal dude with a little blade. Yeah, he might be able to lose his terror radius and be all creepy, but it's the same situation. One good shot from any of the characters above, and yeah, it's game over. So unfortunately, I don't think Ghostface would last long at all. I reckon he would definitely still be one of the first dead. Alright then, I think that is it for the instantly dead, guys. We are going to be moving on to slightly struggles. Now, the first killer I reckon that would slightly struggle is the Plague. Now, the Plague is obviously very strong, but I think sick and infection isn't going to really do much to any of these people. Yeah, it might give Clown a funny tummy, or, I don't know, make Trapper slow down a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think with adrenaline and aggression, a lot of these killers would just be able to power through the sickness. And then she's basically just a normal killer who can kind of swing her mace around a little bit. I did potentially think about an aspect of her being able to hide in the smoke that she's creating, but that was kind of stupid because she kind of doesn't create anywhere near enough to be able to hide herself within that. She's one of the tallest killers, which, I don't know, I reckon she would last a little bit, but eventually get pretty outnumbered pretty quickly. And this might be a controversial one, as I also think with the nurse. I think the nurse would be very easy to take out, more or less. The only thing that the other killers would have to take in mind is her ability to kind of blink and teleport. She would be quite difficult to catch, but I reckon in a sea of death and destruction and so many different weapons and dangers surrounding her, I don't think she'd really be able to blink effectively away from danger. It would be very much the case, I reckon she'd blink a couple of times, get a couple of swings in, and then maybe even accidentally getting taken out by damage from two other killers fighting. As again, if Bubba was to swing his chainsaw around a nurse when she's just blinked to a location, she's dead. That's it. Game over. As well as I also think the Huntress as well. Now, the thing about the Huntress is she has got experience in battle. Obviously, she goes hunting on a regular basis, or did with her mum anyway, so she's kind of good in one-on-one situations, but I also do reckon that her childlike kind of mind would also be her death, and I reckon it would happen pretty quickly. I reckon if faced with all of these killers at the same time, she may get a couple of good licks in, throw a couple of hatchets correctly and hit a couple of people, but again, it is one of the killers that I find if they got caught by one of the bigger, more supernatural killers, would instantly be taken out, and I reckon she could either potentially even like throw a tantrum, lose control a little bit, and let that also be the death of her. So unfortunately, I don't reckon Huntress would last long either. Next up, I reckon that Deathslinger would also slightly struggle before eventually dying. These are in order, I don't know why I'm doing that. So the reason why I think Deathslinger would pretty much not last very long is because his gun. Yes, he's got a blade on the end of his gun that he can start swinging about, but at the end of the day, the second that he shoots a single shot, spears them in and injures them, like let's say for example he shoots one of the Legion right through the chest, brings them in and kills them that way, he's then going to have to stand still and reload his gun and just kind of wind it back in, put the bullet in, and he's dead. He's just a kind of a normal dude. He kind of seems to have like some supernatural element a part of him, but I still reckon that the second he started to reload that gun, he would be killed pretty quickly, and I reckon if he didn't use the gun at all, he would also be killed pretty quickly. So yeah, Deathslinger wouldn't last long either. And the same goes for the Trapper. Now, I know the Trapper is a fairly pain-resistant character, because obviously he's been tortured by the entity the most for trying to reject it, so he is good with managing pain. However, pain management is one thing, getting decapitated by a Leatherface or a Billy or strung up with chains by Pinhead or something like that, I still reckon he would be taken out pretty quickly, because at the end of the day he's just a normal kind of human with obviously enhanced abilities. But even his bear traps, he may get somebody stuck in the bear trap that can either kind of incapacitates them like one of the weaker characters, or gives them a slight kind of hindrance like for one of the bigger ones. But again, with just a machete, I don't reckon he'd last too long at all. Clown as well, I don't think would last long at all. He's kind of, I think he could initially get away with it by maybe dropping a couple of his bottles and releasing the toxins about, but I think with some of the more supernatural killers, again, who could be very resistant towards it, he would basically have no defense for that. He's a fairly big dude, so yeah, he may have padding and he may be taken down as easily as some of the slimmer characters, but I reckon very quickly some of the people would be able to just completely overpower him instantly through either supernatural means or better weaponry or better tactics or something like that. I reckon he is still very much outclassed by the competition. And the last killer that would slightly struggle is going to be the other half of the twins, Charlotte. At the end of the day, her power comes from Victor, who died instantly, so I reckon it wouldn't take much longer for Charlotte to follow behind Victor. At the end of the day, she's a normal human. She may have a little bit of kind of aggression to kind of see her through, a bit of adrenaline if you will, but I reckon Charlotte would also be taken out very, very quickly, but I still reckon that she would still struggle a little bit before going. So first killer into the decent fight, we are going to have Billy. Billy, I wouldn't really say it's anything to do with him physically that would see him this far, but honestly, his chainsaw would carry. Obviously with a chainsaw he can eliminate pretty much everybody underneath him, if played right. The only problem would be is then when he's facing either other killers with chainsaws or other killers with abilities that can kind of negate that, like the spirit being able to phase close to him. He's still fairly one-shot kind of down, but I do reckon his chainsaw would give it so that he has a decent chance at least putting up a bit of a fight. And that is also going to be the same with Bubba. Now, I honestly would say Bubba would have the edge over Billy, because Bubba is a more demanding force, he's very more imposing, and I feel like he uses his chainsaw better. Instead of sprinting with it, he kind of uses it as the brute force, as his weapon that he uses to kill people. So I reckon he would have a little bit more knowledge with his chainsaw. He's a bigger dude, so he wouldn't be as easily taken out, because he'd probably be able to take a couple of hits before he does go down, but I still think he would go down before being able to do anything too spectacular. He'd definitely put up a little bit of a fight, but I don't think it's quite as good enough as an amazing effort would be. Next up, we have the Doctor. Now, the Doctor, again, I kind of had a couple of ideas about the idea of him being able to like zap the entire floor, electrocute every single killer at once kind of thing, but then I realised even after that, some of these killers will be pretty resistant to a little bit of electricity, and then again, even though he is kind of an imposing force, I still reckon some of the other killers would be able to easily take him out with a surprise hit or with just far superior tactics and weaponry. Next up, we have the Blight. Now, the Blight is a little bit weird for me, because obviously the Blight serum can either enhance or hurt, so obviously he would be able to use the Blight serum to hurt other killers and whatnot, but I feel like that would be it. His super speed, kind of being able to bounce off of objects, wouldn't really help too much, because at the end of the day, Legion could be quick, and kind of speed wouldn't really make too much of a factor when it's against other bloodthirsty killers like this. So I reckon, yes, he may be able to dash around the map quickly, yes, he probably could get a couple of other killers with the Blight serum and hit and cripple them, but depending on who he stabs, it might not do much at all. Like, I can't imagine the Blight serum would do too much to the Nemesis, and the Nemesis could take out the Blight fairly easily, I imagine. So yeah, Blight is in the decent fight. And the last killer that is going into the decent fight as well is going to be the Spirit. Now, the Spirit is a little bit of a weird one, but I'm going to be taking her power fairly literally in kind of copying, pasting it from what it can do in Dead by Daylight. So I don't reckon that she'd be able to phase endlessly around and kind of appear whenever she wants to. I reckon she would have to have a slight recharge. So I think that's where her downfall would be. Similar with Nurse, kind of the fact that she wouldn't be able to use her ability constantly, because then if she could, she would be absolutely unstoppable. but she also would have the fatigue period. During that fatigue period, yes, she's a ghost, so I don't know fully how that would work. There's a lot of kind of variables when it comes to the spirit, so I'm taking her kind of as literally as possible. I reckon another killer would be able to get the hit on her, depending if they hit her when she's not phasing, kind of even idly when she's not fully phasing, if you get what I mean. But also dealing with some of the other supernatural opponents as well, I reckon they could definitely get the edge over her. So it's a little bit of a weird one, and I think it's one of the ones with the most kind of flexibility on above, but I'm being safe and I'm just sticking her in the decent fight because I think the recharge is what would be her demise. Now we are coming up to the amazing effort category. Now the first killer that I'm going to be putting in this category is going to be the Demogorgon. Now the Demogorgon might sound fairly weak to begin with, but then kind of when you remember what he's like in the show, the only thing that kills or hurts him properly is supernatural forces. Like, yes, he doesn't like fire, yes, he got caught in a bear trap, but he pretty much walk away from both of those unscathed. The only thing that really did damage to him was 11, so kind of putting that same mentality into here as well, I doubt that many of the killers below him would be able to really do lasting damage for him, because he is extremely resilient. But again, and I know I'm saying this a lot, but it's just the truth, I reckon that the supernatural killers would get the element above him because they have weaponry that would do more than just stab or hurt. It would kill and maim and you're done, son, kind of thing. A weird way to kind of think it, but I genuinely think with the animalistic nature of the Demogorgon, he would be pretty decent at taking out several of the killers below him. So yeah, he's amazing. What can we say? The next killer that I'm going to be putting into the amazing effort category is going to be the artist. Now you guys are going to have to bear with me on this one, but the only thing that we've seen the artist being able to conjure with her kind of ink are the blades on her hands. I reckon that's not the only thing she can do. I reckon she can do a lot with this ink, but for the practice of Dead by Daylight, she needs weapons to hurt the survivors. However, there is nothing saying that she couldn't also use this same ink kind of magic to give herself better weaponry to fight the competition and defenses as well. For example, she could hide in the corner and just summon like a spiked ink ball around her that's killers would have a real tough time getting through. It kind of depends how you think of the ink, and I kind of think of it as a malleable tool that can do a lot of different things and give her a lot of defenses as well as strengths. But the one problem is she is fairly generic before that. She's kind of just like a really tall woman. She acts like a pigeon, and I do reckon when the killers eventually get through those kind of defenses and weapons, I reckon she would be fairly quick to be taken out. It'd just have to take a hell of a killer to be able to get through those. Again, you guys might see it differently, but I'm sticking her there because I like the idea of her behaving like Riot in the Venom show, where she can just create whatever she wants and, you know, unlucky. Alright, the next killer into the amazing effort would go to Pinhead. Now, Pinhead obviously is the angel to some, demon to others. Pleasure and pain is his kind of thing. So I reckon nothing that the killers before him could do anything to him that he wouldn't consider A, as pleasurable, but B, nothing that he couldn't handle with, because obviously he has his chains that kind of would do a lot of defense and attack work for a lot of these killers. The only problem then comes from the killers who would be more resistible to said chains. Like, imagine if the Pinhead tried to tie the Oni down with 3 chains, it wouldn't work. He would instantly click them off and beat his ass for the inconvenience. And yes, he could also kind of use teleport peoples like he does in his Mori to get rid of people, but I don't again reckon he could do that as easily with some of the bigger killers out there, because to get him to do that, he would have to chain them up and force them into a situation where they can then be taken, whereas I can't imagine he could be able to do that with the Oni. And guys, that is the end of the amazing effort category, which means that the final 5 are going to be Nemesis. Now, Nemesis is up here because obviously he is an incredible bioweapon. He is the tallest killer. He is probably one of the most imposing killers when it comes to his presence, his physique, if you will. And he is extremely resistant to most things. Now, obviously, I don't think I'm going to compare him to how he is in Resident Evil 3, because obviously every time that he dies, he comes back and evolves into a harder form to fight. But without question, I reckon he would be one of the last 5 left. His sheer force, aggression, and power, especially coming from his tentacle, and potentially the zombies. You never know, the zombies could be in there as well. I reckon he would easily withstand a lot of these killers just through his presence and pain resistance alone, and then not only that, having the brutal strength to be able to 1 KO a lot of these killers definitely puts him as a finalist, no questions about it. The next one that I'm going to be discussing is going to be the Executioner. Now, I obviously, as I said in the previous videos, I'm fairly, not ignorant's the right word, but I don't know much about Pyramid Head. I've not played Silent Hill 2, the only Pyramid Head that I've ever played against or as is obviously the one in Dead by Daylight, and I don't really know his lore that well, but what I do know is that he is an absolute fucking unit. I also do know that he's kind of like the manifestation of James Sunderland's guilt and like desire for punishment, so he is kind of like an immortal force. He's not a human, he is a supernatural being capable of many, many things. All of them are not good for your skin. So I reckon, considering how great his power actually is, he would easily be one of the final 5 remaining, if not the winner. Now, next up is going to be Michael Myers. Michael Myers is a weird one because without question he would be a finalist. He is immortal. But the only reason why I don't think he is the clear and cut winner is the fact that his weapon is a knife. Yes, Michael has a weapon. It is a tiny knife that kind of wouldn't do much to many of the other finalists, but he may not be killable per se, but he is definitely incapacitatable, if that's alright. He can get knocked out, is what I'm trying to say. So I reckon he would, at the end of the game, not really be able to do much to the other killers, but could repetitively and constantly getting absolutely KO'd by the rest of the team. So yes, he is absolutely a finalist, but I don't know if he's going to be the clear and cut winner. He is definitely, though, going to be one of the final 5. And as well in the final 5, of course, we have the Oni. The Oni in his lore has killed absolutely thousands. He knows exactly what to do in battle. Not only this, he is a blood god, a rage demon. He would not go down without a fight. And I reckon the top 2 finalists in this would be Pyramid Head and the Oni. I reckon those 2 would be the ones that would be fighting out for the gold crown. I honestly do not know who would win. Oni, without question, is one of the most disastrous forces in Dead by Daylight, and without question, he would solo 90% of this roster. And guys, you may be wondering, Wraith? Really? Being able to take on the Nemesis and Oni? No. You're thinking about it all wrong. All wrong. Wraith is 100% a finalist. For the simple reason that he starts the trial cloaked. If he's smart, if he knows what he's doing, he could just stand in the corner of the map, completely invisible, let everybody else fight and kill each other, and then reveal himself right at the end. If he didn't have his cloaking ability, he would be instantly dead. But the fact that he can go invisible and silent, nobody would know where he is. They would have to fight each other instead of wasting time to get to the Wraith. Yes, somebody may be able to accidentally hit him whilst they're fighting somebody else, but I honestly think with his speed he could also pretty much dodge anything that he saw coming his way. Obviously this is all stupid theory, but I reckon if he was invisible and in the corner of the room or the corner of the map and letting everybody else fight, there's no way that they'd be able to get to him without them knowing he is there. He is incredibly strong because he can use his invisibility endlessly, which would make him a finalist in this case. It absolutely would. Guys, that is it. Thank you once again for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you again for this comment. It's been amazing to talk about, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I know it's another weird one that doesn't really have much merit other than fun theory crafting and whatnot, but I do hope you enjoyed it. If you do, don't forget to leave it a like and subscribe for more, and please let me know what you want me to cover next down in the comments below. But guys, I've taken up far too much of your time already. Have a fantastic evening. Take care. Bye bye for now.